Salutations. We are back with more Sweet Pool. I left you off a cliffhanger. I'm so mean. Anyway, nothing could possibly surprise him now. And yet, his legs threatened to give out with each step. His body shook uncontrollably. Are you serious? Just when I thought it was Makoto or somebody else, like the sister. But no, it's fucking Tetsuo. Tetsuo was standing there, silhouetted against the dark rain clouds behind him. Youji didn't know why he'd answered the door. Couldn't he have just ignored it? Hadn't that been the plan? His grip on the doorknob tightened. The only thing you don't want to hear when somebody opens the door. What even? Quickly, he tried to pull the door shut, but Tetsuo wedged his shoe in to stop him. He grabbed the door and peered in at Youji through the gap.
Kaere
Anaseyo, kaere. Those are your favorite words, Youji. Youji growled, glaring.
なんで来たんだよ早く帰れよ
Me for your sweet eyes.
Sorry. But Tetsuo simply stared back without a word. Somehow the silence felt accusing. He squeezed his eyes shut, his hands still on the doorknob.
帰れなんでどうして来たんだよお前の顔なんか見たくない嫌なんだよだから帰ってくれ早く
The words came out in an incoherent jumble. He didn't want to see Tetsuo again. His face was a reminder of what had happened. He should have hated every moment of it, but a tiny part of it had felt good. Physically, yeah, but what the hell. He knew it was a normal reaction to being stimulated in that manner, but still, he resented it. It made him feel so unbearably pathetic. A moment of silence passed. Then he heard movement and opened his eyes. Tetsuo had slipped a stack of paper halfway through the gap in the door.
これを渡しに来ただけだ
On closer inspection, it looked like a bundle of worksheets. Then Youji realized that it must be Monday. He'd inadvertently, skipped school with no notice. Come to think of it, he had a vague memory of his phone ringing.
神谷に頼まれたから
You mean that sexy fucking science doctor, teacher. I'm going great today. Staring blankly, Youji took the worksheets. The paper felt warm against his fingertips. With his task complete, Tetsuo slightly turned and walked away. Youji didn't bother seeing him off. Instead, he shut the door and turned back to his world. The sticky darkness enveloping his body. The wriggling noise that echoed in his ears. Youji stood there at the door, unmoving, his homework still in hand. Is he crying or laughing or both? What the hell? All of a sudden, he started laughing. Oh god. He's mad. You've driven him to insanity. Oh, his stress level. As he laughed, his chest ached, and he gripped the paper so hard it crumpled in his hand. Everything was so messed up. Him, Tetsuo, everything. So what if Kamiya had asked him to? What kind of person would agree to that request after what he'd done? He could have made up any excuse to get out of it. And yet, he hadn't. Why? Had he come to check on his victim? To see the defeat in Yoji's eyes? To point and laugh? Or... no. What difference did it make? Really, what difference did it make? He's completely lost his shit. Leaning back against the door, Youji slowly sank to the tile. He could feel the chill seeping through his clothes. Tetsuo was just one part of this nightmare. Everything was awful, everything to blame. Youji himself included. Oh, alone in the hell his home had become. Surrounded by wreathing lumps of flesh, Youji could only cradle his head and wonder where it would end. Yes, I wonder too. Fucking madness. Sometime after Tetsuo had left, Youji knelt on the love seat, facing the aquarium. This is gorgeous imagery. Look at these little fishy. His tetras swam through the glistening water as dainty little bubbles rose to the surface. As he gazed vacantly at the aquarium, he spied a crimson blob in the corner of his eye. At some point, while he had been distracted, it had crawled its way up to the edge of the tank. What the hell? Illuminated by the light reflecting off the water, it looked even more like a clump of raw meat. The lump was on the verge of falling into the tank. Youji needed to move it, lest it have some weird effect on the fish. But before he could, the lump jerked forward and fell into the water with a light splash. Yep, I figured. Mistaking it for food, some of the tetras approached and began to nibble. A red haze filled the water. He needed to get it out of there, and yet, for some reason, he couldn't will his body to move. After a few moments, the tetras scattered. They must have realized that it wasn't food. The lump sank past the seaweed to the floor of the tank, trailing a cloud of red as it went. And that was that. Nothing happened. Despite everything, the aquarium was the one thing that never changed. Its cold, sterile beauty remained untarnished. But before he could finish that thought, one of the fish began to act strangely. Out of nowhere, it started to swim in clumsy circles, as though it had lost its sense of direction. Then, after a moment, it stopped moving entirely. The next thing he knew, there was a sharp popping sound. The fish seemed to lurch in its place. Then, oh no, fucking knew something like that would happen. Trauma. Then with yet another pop, a flower burst from the tetra's body. A flower of viscera? Viscera? Oh, you poor fish. God, you don't need this. Holy shit. Reason. Youji gasped as his brain registered exactly what he was seeing. In an instant, the tetra's perfect form had become a mangled monstrosity. It felt like a glimpse of cold, hard reality. Something that had been beautiful moments ago was now a sight to turn one's stomach. The other tetras swam past, unaffected by the remains of their fellow. This was reality, plain and simple. Just then, he heard a sound at his front door. Yet again. Another visitor? Was it Tetsuo again? Hope not. The thought made him tremble. His breathing quickened. Tetsuo was the last person he wanted to see. He should just stay here. Forget the door. And yet, his feet moved off their own accord. Maybe it wasn't Tetsuo. Or maybe no one was there. Either way, he needed to know. Only then could he have peace of mind. Youji walked down the hall, his body stiff, the floor colder than usual under his feet. Arriving at the door, he peered out through the peephole. ... Beyond the curve of the fish islands, Youji saw nothing. Were they hiding, or am I just paranoid? Youji waited with bated breath, but couldn't hear any movement. Slowly, he slid his stiff fingers around the doorknob and opened the door. The sky was dark with storm clouds, and the rain still hammered the ground. Youji looked both ways down the hall, but there was no one in sight. Feeling slightly relieved, he opened the door a little farther. After being cooped up in the apartment for so long, the outside air felt refreshing. He inhaled deeply. Just then, he noticed something on the ground at his feet. A plastic food container had spilled out of a to-go bag. He squatted down to look at it. The contents appeared to be some kind of stew. The lid was open and most of it had spilled out onto the ground. So the sound he'd heard earlier was the container hitting the ground? Did someone purposely leave it here? It's probably Makoto. He couldn't think of anyone who would bring him food. Erica had just given birth. There was no way she was able to walk around just yet. Did someone drop it off at the wrong apartment? The mystery of it all was a little unsettling, but he couldn't just leave it lying there. After one last look around, Youji scooped up the bag and container and went back inside. Then he returned with some paper towels and cleaned up the mess. Tossing the dirty paper towels in the trash, he rinsed out the food container in the sink, set it to dry and went back to his room. At this point, most of the flesh lumps had stopped moving and the horrible wriggling sound was gone. He was birthing them with less frequency today. His condition was slowly stabilizing, both physically and mentally. Maybe it was finally over, in which case he needed to go back to school. But first, he decided to see the doctor one more time. The past few days had been downright bizarre. After what he'd been through, there had to be something wrong with his body. This time, however, he would bring one of the flesh lumps with him. One look, and the fatigue excuse would fly out the window. This time, he didn't care if it was a disease. He just wanted to know the cause. Not knowing was far, far worse. Drowning men would clutch at straws, he thought, then flopped down on his bed and closed his eyes. Need a burp, please. I'm trying. And failed. The next morning, Youji awoke as the first rays of light filtered in through his window. It was still early, but nevertheless, he decided to get ready for school. He realized belatedly that he had no idea what the current date was, so he switched the TV on for the first time in ages. I'm a power saver, I see. The rest of his morning was spent giving his room and aquarium a much-needed deep clean. The flesh lump had made the tank cloudy, so he took it out and changed the water. A few tetras had died overnight, so he removed their corpses as well. Save for a faint lingering sense of fever and lethargy, he felt much better today. He'd stopped giving birth too. The past few days had truly been a waking nightmare to the point he had wished himself dead. But now he felt nothing. The dead flesh dirtied his hands, but he continued his cleaning regardless, scooping up each little corpse one by one. Then, once he was finished, he left the apartment. Outside, the sky was a pale grey, though the storm had since let up. It felt like an eternity had passed since the last time he'd walked through the outside world. The half-dried asphalt, I don't know how to say that, smelled of rain. Today, his plan was to visit the neighbourhood clinic and get a checkup before school. In his pocket was a plastic bag with a withered lump inside. What would the doctor say when she saw it? He was mildly terrified to find out. At the clinic, the waiting room was packed, as usual. Once again, he waited about 30 minutes until the nurse called his name, then stepped into the exam room. Wow. He informed the doctor that his symptoms had worsened and promptly handed her the plastic bag. The doctor took one look inside and gave Youji a funny look before handing the bag back dismissively. Confused, Youji opened the bag. The lump had vanished without a trace, of course. The doctor seemed to intuit something from this. Whatever that. Oh god. She asked him to undergo a simple test, saying it would produce fast, though not comprehensive, results. Flabbergasted, Youji reluctantly agreed. The results showed nothing out of the ordinary. Satisfied? The doctor asked, looking at him with a knowing expression on her face. In the end, she decided that the root cause was anxiety, and that his hallucinations were a symptom of high stress levels. She prescribed him a mood stabilizer and sleeping pills and instructed him to get as much rest as possible. With that, the appointment was over. Youji paid at the front desk and left the clinic. As he walked to the station, his brain attempted to process what had just happened. He was sure he'd put the lump in the bag this morning, and yet the bag was empty. Had he merely convinced himself that he'd put it in before he left? Or had he grabbed the wrong bag? Or maybe it's alive and it just scurried away like an extraterrestrial creature. No, he definitely remembered putting it in the bag. But now it was just gone. Vanished. He'd gone to the doctor looking for answers and left even more confused. His legs felt like lead. School was the last place he wanted to be. There was no way he'd be able to concentrate like this. But now that the doctor had given him a clean bill of health for the second time, it reaffirmed an alternate possibility lurking in the back of his mind. He needed to talk to Tetsuo or Zenya. After everything they'd put him through, he really didn't fancy the prospect of being around either one, but he had no other choice. Worst case scenario, if he failed to uncover anything significant, at least he would know that it was time to give up. This was his only lead. He needed... lead? Huh. This was his only lead. I said lead before. He needed to find out what they knew. With renewed determination in his stride, he pressed onward to school. As soon as he opened the classroom door, the familiar buzz washed over him. First period had just ended. Youji had only been gone a few days, and yet it felt like he'd returned from some distant planet. Some of his classmates noticed him at the door, but quickly went back to minding their own business. Youji walked to his desk, hung his book bag on the hook, and sat down. The room seemed unusually loud today. He wondered if he just needed to acclimate to it again. I don't know. However, it quickly became apparent that something was out of the ordinary. Nearby, a group of students were chatting in a circle, their voices loud with excitement.
Shironuma! あいつほんとやべえよ!
Nani?
俺見てないんだけどさ、何やらかしたの?
What would he do?
3年の沖縄がいるじゃん。朝さ、下駄箱んとこで白沼があいつ殴ったらしいよ。そんで、沖縄もやり返そうとしてさ、なんかすげえ剣幕だったって。
They're fighting over Youji. Tetsuo punched Zenya?
数学の吉村とか、あと神谷とかが2人を引き剥がしてさ。んで、職員室連れてって、どっちも家に返されたってさ。
ああ、だから白沼いないんだ。わけわかんねえ。ほんと、何考えてんのあいつ。
沖縄が殴るとかやばいよな。ヤクザの息子でしょ。狙われるんじゃねえの?
Youji listened to all this with disbelief. Tetsuo punching Zenya? That sounded so backwards. He could see Zenya punching Tetsuo for sure, but he simply couldn't imagine a situation in which Tetsuo would be the aggressor. Last Friday after school, outside in the rain, no matter what Zenya had done, Tetsuo hadn't lashed out. He'd simply stared Zenya down. But Tetsuo really hit someone out of nowhere. Look what he's done to you. But he would do this, he would insert himself into you without consent, out of random. But you don't believe he could punch somebody, what the hell? Had Zenya taunted him into throwing the first punch? That seemed somewhat feasible, at least. Feeling restless, Youji shifted his gaze to the windows.
Youji!
Hey, it's my boy. A cheerful voice called his name, and Youji turned to find Makoto standing there with a smile.
おはよ
いつ来たの？今？
う。あ
Makoto seemed to be back to his usual self. Things had been awkward between them last week, but perhaps the time apart had done them some good.
ずいぶん休んでたけど、具合は？
I forgot what made it awkward between
あ。
them.
ああ。だいぶ。
そっか。ならよかった。
Makoto beamed and Youji felt a twinge of guilt. Makoto was the one who had warned him to stay away from Zenya in the first place.
そういやさ、今朝の話、聞いたか？
今朝
Drama.
白沼の話。
みんなが話してるのが聞こえたから。
And everybody's obnoxiously loud.
やっぱ、白沼ってヤバいやつだったんだな。前からそれっぽい感じだったけどさ。
A nutcase.
だって、沖縄が殴るとかって、普通じゃできねえし。
Surely.
まあ、いつかなんかやらかすかなとは思ってたけど。
Makoto shot a meaningful glance at Tetsuo's empty desk. But something about his tone and expression irked Youji. Makoto was probably shocked by what had happened, a perfectly understandable reaction. But behind that idle gossip, Youji could sense some hostility from Makoto and the others. None of them even knew Tetsuo. Not like I received anal from this cunt. Jesus. They had no idea what he was thinking or what he'd been through.
な、そ
Or
う
what
思わ
he'd
ね
put me through. Jesus. Poor Youji.
そうかな。
Don't judge a book by its cover, but yeah, whatever. Youji did his best to conceal his emotions, but his response came out more curt than casual. Makoto looked at him in surprise.
あれ？そう思わん？
どっちでもいいよ。
Makoto felt silent, clearly hurt by this. Youji felt a fresh wave of guilt. Why was he so angry with Makoto? If anyone had a reason to complain about Tetsuo, it was Youji. And yet, he couldn't bring himself to agree with his classmates. Instead, his first instinct was to scoff at them for acting like they knew anything. Just then, the bell rang, cutting through the tension to signal the start of second period, sorry. Their next class was chemistry. Oh my god, what have I done? My voice got strained and deeper then, you know why. Kamiya entered the room, books in hand, and the other students wandered back to their seats. Silently, Makoto turned away and went back to his desk.
お、崎山。
Let me smash. Becky. Upon noticing Yoji's presence, Kamiya smiled. Smiled.
もう平気なのか？
はい。
心配したよ。もしかしたら家で倒れてるんじゃないかって。
すみません。
Sorry, I'm alive. As it turned out, it wasn't easy to call in sick when you weren't even sure whether it was day or night. His phone showed a lot of missed calls from the school. Technically, he'd skipped without permission.
まあいいさ。昼休みにちょっと科学室へ来なさい。
I don't
話がある
trust
か
this. Again,
わかりました。
the things I did in that chemistry lab, yo, you don't know how much I have tainted it. Kamiya replied with a grin and a nod, then returned to his lectern. Meanwhile, Youji could see some of his classmates stealing glances his way. As he rose to his feet for a morning prayer, he felt his mood sour. That fucking mouse was getting annoying, I've just realised. He couldn't stop thinking about Tetsuo punching Zenya. Supposedly, they'd been sent home for the day. Why would Tetsuo do that? Yoji spent the rest of class wondering what had happened. At the start of the lunch break, Youji promptly left the classroom and headed to the chemistry lab, where I have traumatic memories of being caught masturbating. Oh god. Kamiya had wanted to talk to him about something, but he couldn't imagine what it might be. His unexcused absences, perhaps, yeah, When he arrived at the chemistry lab, the door was unlocked and the lights were already on.
いらっしゃい。待ってたよ。
Here I is. Kamiya was sitting perched on the lab table. He smiled and raised his hand in greeting as Youji opened the door. In his other hand was a package of rice crackers.
これね、昼飯。
Why? Okay then. He must have noticed Youji staring at it. He gave the crackers a little shake as he explained.
食べる？
いえ、
Feed him.
そこ座って。
Kamiya indicated the lab table opposite his. Youji did as instructed.
急に呼び出して悪いね。
いえ、
体調の方はど
なんとか。
う？そうか。
You're more like a doctor. Or nurse. School nurse. Kamiya nodded and nibbled on a cracker.
大丈夫ならいいんだけど。休んでる間、連絡なかったでしょ。まあ、体調不良だろうとは思ったから、俺の方で処理しといたよ。
すみません。ご迷惑をおかけして。
いやいやいや、いいんだよ別に。担任なんだから。具合悪い時に無理させたくないしね。
The package of crackers rustled as Kamiya waved his hands emphatically. Emphatically?
それよりね、病み上がりでこんな話をするのも申し訳ないんだが、実は今朝白沼がちょっと問題を起こしてな。
Clearly.
もう知ってるか？
Okay.
一応、なんとなくは。
The instant he heard Tetsuo's name, Yoji's whole body stiffened. Kamiya adjusted his glasses with his middle finger.
まあね。
He just gave me the root finger.
3年の沖永っているだろう。彼を相手に喧嘩というか、どうも白沼が一方的に殴ったらしいんだ。
So Tetsuo had started it. What on earth would provoke him to do that?
話って、そのことですか？
それもある。
なんで俺に？
白沼とクラスで一番仲がいいのって崎山だろ？崎山が休んでる時、プリントを持っていくように頼んだんだけど。
True, Tetsuo had gone to the trouble, but still, Yoji couldn't really claim to know him better than anyone else did. Until recently, they'd never even held a conversation. Polishing off the last cracker, Kamiya crumpled the empty package into a bowl.
ほら、白沼っていつも一人というか、ちょっと人を寄せつけない空気があるだろう。そこが悪いこともなく、むしろいいぐらいなんだが、どうも何を考えてるのかわからないところがある。担任がこんなこと言っちゃいけないんだろうけどね、本当は。
What a lonely adult. Kamiya shrugged.
今朝の喧嘩のことも理由がよくわからなくてね。聞いても何も答えてくれないんだ。ただ、崎山とは結構話をするんだろう？
そんなことは。
For some reason, Yoji couldn't deny it. If the question was whether or not he liked Tetsuo, then the answer was an emphatic no. No. And yet he couldn't bring himself to say the words.
で、本題だ。帰りに今日の宿題のプリントを白沼に届けてやってくれないかな。崎山が休んでた時のお礼のつもりでってわけじゃないけど。
Setting the bowled up plastic onto the table next to him, Kamiya picked up a stapled stack of papers and held it out to Yoji. Oh no. Yoji hesitated. Accepting this task would mean having to see Tetsuo again.
何か用でもあるのか
Yeah.
I got no schedules, and I deny my only friend Makoto. After a moment, he decided to take the worksheets. It was hard to decline knowing that Tetsuo had been willing to do it for him. Plus, this might be his best opportunity to finally get some answers.
そうか。よかった。それじゃあ頼んだよ。これ白沼の住所と地図ね。
Kamiya handed Yoji a piece of paper, then picked up the wad of plastic beside him.
これも持ってく？
Wait,
Yeah.
I'm not a trash can.
So-
Fuck. Darn. With the printed directions in hand, Yoji turned and headed for the door.
それじゃあ失礼します。
よろしく頼むよ。
Kamiya waved and Yoji nodded curtly before walking out of the chemistry lab. As he walked up the stairs, he let out a breath. He was going to Tetsuo's house after school today. Oh shit, the thought made him unbearably nervous. He had been trying not to think about it, but the memory of Friday's incident was still fresh in his mind. One look at Tetsuo, and he might freeze up altogether. Still, he had to take the chance. He was desperate for any information he could get. Reassuring his anxious brain, he headed back to the class.
おい、なんだよ誠。怖い顔して。女にでも振られたか？
Oh, what's wrong with Makoto?
うるせえよ。
Oh, he angry. School was over, and with the cleaning duty finished, most of the students had gone home. Makoto was sitting with one elbow on his desk, sulking. Desk. Wow.
おお、怖っ。俺ら帰るけど、誠どうすんの？
俺はいいよ。また明日な。
Damn, he's salty. He needs his food
おう。
to make him very happy. His friend took no offense to his snippy tone. One by one, they filed out of the classroom. Alone, he heaved a loud, frustrated sigh. Yoji had put him in a bad mood. How so? Once afternoon assembly had ended, Makoto had suggested they take the train home together, but Yoji had blown him off with an excuse about an errand. He had a feeling he knew about what this errand was. Yoji was going to Tetsuo's house. Oh no. Do we have a overprotective, jealous friend? Not overprotective, but just envious. He didn't have any proof of this, of course. It was pure intuition. No, perhaps closer to paranoia. But from the way Tetsuo and Yoji had been acting lately, he couldn't think of any other possibility. Well, you aren't wrong. On Monday, Yoji had been out sick. Kamiya had called Tetsuo over and given him a stack of worksheets. It could only have been homework for Yoji. Nobody else had been absent that day. After school, a friend invited him to hang out, but Makoto turned him down. Instead, he quietly told Tetsuo. He didn't know where Tetsuo lived, but he had seen him on the train a few times in the past, so he knew it had to be in the same general direction as Yoji and himself. As he boarded the train, a damp stench tickled his nose. The cars were always stuffy and miserable during the rainy season. The train pulled into his usual station, then departed a few minutes later. Yoji's station was the next one. Tetsuo was standing by the door. Makoto watched him from the next car. Arriving at the platform, the train slowed to a stop. The doors opened and a crowd of passengers deboarded, Tetsuo among them. Makoto's guess had been right on the money. Angry, he stepped off the train, taking care not to lose sight of Tetsuo. There could be no doubt. Tetsuo was headed to Yoji's house. But even after confirming his suspicions, he wasn't done tailing Tetsuo just yet. He wanted to see this to the bitter end. It was then that he realized that anger was getting the better of him. Makoto had never liked Tetsuo. He was too unapproachable, too opaque. Bruh. He was always alone, and seemed to like it that way. Recently, however, he'd started interacting with Yoji. As far as Makoto knew, this had come out of nowhere. Whatever the reason, it made him angry. He didn't want Tetsuo anywhere near Yoji. Yoji never tried to make friends with anyone. Maybe he was embarrassed about being the guy who had got held back. To To the rest of the class, he was the older kid with health issues, and everyone kept their distance from him. This just worried Makoto even more. It felt like if he didn't do something, Youji would spend the rest of his school life as an outcast, or maybe drop out entirely. Although Youji was rarely the one to initiate conversations, Makoto found him surprisingly easy to talk to. His absent-minded personality was something new. It made Makoto want to find out what was going on inside. Before he knew it, hanging out with Youji had become the norm. Do you mean inside his, personality? I mean, no, inside his mentality, yeah. At some point, he'd even started to believe that no one but him would ever be there for Youji. He'd never questioned this belief or wonder why he felt this way. Perhaps that was why he felt so nervous seeing Tetsuo and Youji together. He was anxious about losing his place as Yoji's friend, something he'd previously taken for granted. When he thought about it logically, he knew there was no harm in Tetsuo and Youji talking. His rational mind understood, but the worry remained. He needed to keep those two apart. Makoto's own thoughts filled him with shame, because this is the yandere of him, but as a companion, he knew this attachment to Youji was unhealthy, but he just couldn't stop himself. Makoto continued to follow Tetsuo, keeping as much distance between them as possible. He held his umbrella down low to conceal its face. Up ahead, he could just make out the top of Tetsuo's plastic umbrella. He felt ridiculous. Why was he acting like such a stalker? Just then, Tetsuo entered Youji's apartment complex. Makoto watched him go, suddenly overcome by a feeling of utter misery. Why had Kamiya asked Tetsuo? Makoto was the one who had always looked out for Youji. Why hadn't Kamiya asked him? The dull patter of rain against his umbrella seemed to thunder in his ears. Well, possessive friend. The next day after school, Tetsuo once again disembarked at the Youji's station. Although he'd had no reason to believe that Tetsuo would visit Youji again, and the need to make sure had overwhelmed him. Once his suspicions had been confirmed, fury and panic seized his heart. Why would Tetsuo go back to Yoji's house? Well, did Kamiya send him on another errand? Or did he have something else in mind? That is the question. Makoto sighed for the umpteenth time. And now Youji was going to Tetsuo's house. Whatever. Exasperated, Makoto ran his hands through his hair. He contemplated another afternoon of spying. What the hell, but thought better of it. He couldn't do that to Youji. He was stalking him. Come to think of it, Tetsuo wasn't the only problem lately. Zenya was dangerous too. But even after hearing about Zenya's driver hanging around outside his apartment, Youji didn't seem to be taking it seriously. Why didn't Youji open up to him? Couldn't he see how much Makoto cared? All Makoto wanted was to help. He just wanted Youji to trust him. Why wasn't he good enough? He had serious insecurity. Growling in frustration, Makoto ruffled his hair even harder. He felt so stupid getting all depressed like this. Overcome with shame, he buried his face in his hands. In all his life, he'd never felt like this before. For the time being, he needed to keep Tetsuo and Youji from growing any closer. He needed Youji to choose him. Oh boy. Of course. Makoto wanted Youji for himself. Oh no. Oh god. It's like everybody wants Youji to themselves. A statement like that carried some serious implications, to be sure, but it was the most apt way to describe his feelings.
気持ち悪い。これ。ホモなんじゃねえの?
Oh god. Hang on. Fucking. Okay. I'm such a creep, am I gay or what? A wave of self-loathing washed over him. His forehead hit the desk with a thud, and he slowly closed his eyes. Perhaps you are gay. You're in a gay game. After school, Youji caught the train to Tetsuo's house. It was, in fact, the same train he always rode home, only this time he would be getting off one stop later. Gripping the handle above him, he swayed with the train and watched the scenery fly past the windows. The sky was a dull grey, with only the faint outline of the setting sun peeking through. He was actually going through with this. Yoji was surprised to find himself more curious than afraid. He wasn't excited about having to talk to Tetsuo, of course, but this was a chance to see what he was like outside of school. Maybe he'd get a glimpse of something he wouldn't ordinarily. The train arrived at his usual stop. It felt strange not to be deboarding here. When the train began to move again, his nerves kicked in all at once. Minutes felt like hours. He started to wonder whether he'd missed the stop by accident. Then the conductor announced the next station as the train pulled into the platform. The doors opened and the passengers began to file off. Yoji joined them. The station was laid out much the same as Yoji's own. To be expected, given that they were on the same line, he passed through the turnstiles and exited onto the street, then followed the map that Kamiya had given him. After about 10 minutes of walking, he arrived at an old Japanese-style house located in the middle of a residential area in the neighborhood. Where did area come from? Good on me. The nameplate next to the intercom read Shironuma. This was it, Tetsuo's home. Yoji took a deep breath to calm his racing heart. I'm surprised, Australia doesn't have their fucking name at the front of their house. Only a number. Ooh, but this is Japan. Exhaling slowly, he pressed the button on the intercom.
Hi.
Hi, is this an old woman? A soft feminine voice rang out from the speaker.
崎山って言います。
I'm here to tell you
同じクラ
your
ス。
son's gay. And he backfired to me. His nerves had made him a little tongue-tied.
宿題のプ
Or
リ
is
ン
this
ト
a
を
MILF mom? Not
神谷先生に頼まれて。
ちょっと待っててね。
No. The speaker clicked off and the front door
こ
opened.
んばんは。あらあ
Damn.
ら、どうも。哲夫の母です。
I like your voice. Yeah. Standing there was an older woman who looked every bit as warm and friendly as she sounded. She had the sort of smile that could put anyone at ease. That said, she was quite a bit older than one would expect, given Tetsuo's age. She could easily have passed for... Fucking damn it, why am I was right the first time. Have passed for Tetsuo's grandmother.
わざわざごめんなさいね。ありがとう。
いえ。これを。
Dang my perviness. As he pulled the worksheets from his book bag, the woman's smile broadened.
せっかくだから上がっていってくださいな。ちょうど夕飯の支度をしていたところなのよ。
いえ。でも。
わざわざ届けに来てくれたのに、このまま返してしまうのは申し訳ないわ。
God damn it, why do I cut people off? He hadn't planned on going inside, but he couldn't bring himself to reject her kind offer.
それじゃあ。すみません。
遠慮せずにね。さ、どうぞ。
She opened the door wide and gestured for him to enter. Hesitantly, Yoji stepped over the threshold. Like the exterior, the interior of the house was decorated in traditional Japanese fashion. He could smell something faintly familiar, like a memory from his childhood. From the front door, the wood flooring extended along the hallway to the back.
廊下をまっすぐに行って、突き当たりが哲夫の部屋だから、どうぞ。
I don't know if
お
people
夕
live
飯
in these kind of
す
houses.
ぐにできるから待っててね。
The woman smiled and disappeared into the living room. Part of him was still reluctant, but he couldn't turn back now. He headed down the hallway. The left side opened up onto the garden, and the right side was lined with sliding doors. It recalled distant memories of his grandmother's house. He soon reached the door at the end of the hall. I was gonna say, this house reminds me of most grandparents from Japanese animes. But like, yeah, would have suspected that Shironuma is living with his grandparents. Except his mom's not a cougar, just much older. He paused, wrestling with his thoughts. Should he really have come inside? Maybe he should have said to hell with courtesy and gone home. After a moment of internal debate, he came to a decision. Ignoring the jackhammer pounding in his chest, he raised a sweaty hand and knocked. After a moment, Tetsuo poked his head out and froze. Youji dropped his gaze to his shoes. He desperately wanted to disappear. His body was so tense, he felt like he might pass out. Got a crushy washy? Tetsuo mumbled under his breath. Unable to look at him, Youji dug into his book bag and pulled out the worksheets.
これ神やから。
Tetsuo's gaze shifted to the papers. Youji thrust them into his hands, and his fingers closed around them.
それじゃあ。
待てよ。
As Youji turned to leave, Tetsuo called out, making him flinch.
中入れ。夕飯食ってけとか言われたんだろ。
Of course. Apparently Tetsuo could guess what had happened at the front door. He went back inside his room. Loath as Youji was to obey, he knew he couldn't just stand there. Reluctantly, he stepped inside. It was a perfectly ordinary Japanese-styled bedroom furnished with a bed, a desk and a bookshelf, all in matching black. Nothing looked particularly out of the ordinary. Goddamn, I just realized how exposed he seems. It was actually a little surprising considering Tetsuo gave off such alien vibes. If this were anyone else's room, Youji wouldn't have thought twice about it. Tetsuo dropped his homework on his desk and sat down, then indicated the bed with his chin.
座れ。
Youji did as instructed and sat gingerly on the black divot? Do not fuck. I don't know. A bed. His body felt awkward and stiff, like a robot's. The anxiety was making him hyper-aware of every movement, right down to the twitching of his fingers. Tetsuo was still in his school uniform, minus a tie. Damn. Evidently he hadn't changed clothes since this morning. Youji dropped his gaze to his knees. The silence weighed on him like a ton of bricks. He considered making small talk, but didn't he come here for a reason? What was it? He was so nervous his mind was blank. Desperately, he searched for the answer. First, he was supposed to deliver the homework. Check. Second, that's right, he was supposed to find out if Tetsuo knew everything about his condition. Come to think of it, he'd been wandering around the incident this morning too. Why had Tetsuo punched Zenyo? What else did he want to ask? A memory flashed through his mind. Last Friday in the rain, his hands started to shake, so he clenched them in his lap. Why had Tetsuo done that to him? He wanted to know, but couldn't bring himself to ask. He'd only meant to gather his thoughts, but now his mind was full of memories. Any rational person would have gone to the police. I just realized this. Forget it. I should go home. Just then, Youji looked up and his eyes met Tetsuo's. Awkwardly, he looked away. As usual, Tetsuo's stony gaze was impossible to read. What was Tetsuo feeling right now? This silence was unbearable. Youji had never imagined how frustrating it could be to have such trouble reading a person's thoughts. He needed to leave, but just as he was about to stand up, there came a knock at the door.
ご飯よ
It was some woman from earlier, Tetsuo's mother. Tetsuo stood up and headed for the door. Youji had missed his chance to leave. After all, he couldn't just shove Tetsuo out of the way and make a break for it. At least, the interruption had broken the tension. He felt a little calmer now. Maybe he could hang in there a little longer. Sighing to himself, Youji followed Tetsuo out of the room.
よかったらおかわりしてちょうだいね
Your mother is a blessing. He entered the living room to find a dining table covered with steaming plates of food and bowls of miso soup. The sight was actually kind of heartwarming. He could easily see the care Tetsuo's mother had put into her cooking. Youji could make a few simple dishes himself, but nothing too elaborate. This would be his first proper home-cooked meal since Erica had moved out. Every inch of the room radiated with warmth. It was the perfect place for a family to gather. In other words, it was everything that his apartment wasn't.
そこ座ってちょうだい
Youji nodded and sat where she pointed. Tetsuo sat down next to him. Meanwhile, Tetsuo's mother bustled from the living room to the kitchen and back.
今日はね、たまたま休みをもらってたのよ。うちは共働きだから、いつもはもっと遅くなるんだけど。
Tetsuo's mother explained cheerfully as she placed bowls of white rice next to each plate. Wow, each plate. Youji realized that the table was only set for three: Tetsuo, his mother, and Youji himself.
さあどうぞ。食べて
Hesitantly, Youji picked up his chopsticks. He hadn't felt particularly hungry before, but the delicious smell quickly stimulated his appetite. He glanced out of the corner of his eye to find that Tetsuo had already started eating.
いただきます
He picked up the bowl of miso soup and took a sip. The mellow, savory taste of the broth spread inside his mouth. This sweet, heartwarming moment
うまい
just drags us away from the gruesome scenes and whatnot. Tetsuo's mother beamed.
よかった
Little does this innocent woman know. Oh god. Now that he'd started eating, his body naturally relaxed. Unsure what to try next, he looked over the table and his gaze landed on a serving dish full of stew. Another memory flashed through his mind, a plastic container full of stew, spilling out of a bag outside his front door. It had looked an awful lot like the stew on the table. That said, most stews tended to look alike, so it was possible he was wrong.
あ、よかったら煮物たくさん食べてちょうだい
はい
いつも仕事で出かけてるせいもあってね。この子の友達って会ったことないのよ。だから今日はびっくりしちゃって。仕事がお休みの日で本当によかったわ。
Bless his mother's heart. Guilt welled up in Yoji's chest. They weren't really friends, but of course he couldn't say that.
そういえば、今日も学校に行ったと思ったらすぐに帰ってきたからびっくりしてね。担任の先生からは上級生と揉めたって聞いたけど、だからね、あんまり人様に迷惑かけちゃダメだって言ったんですよ。
God damn it. Tetsuo continued to eat in silence. Evidently, Kamiya hadn't given her all the details.
ごめんなさい。お名前、もう一度聞いてもいい？
崎山です
崎山くん。よかったら、これからも哲夫と仲良くしてやってね。
He couldn't say no to a smile like that. A loving mother. warm food in a warm house. Tetsuo was still in his usual quiet self, but somehow he seemed a little softer around the edges. Here, the wall that always shielded him at school seemed little more than a translucent curtain. And yet, for some reason, Youji sensed a hint of loneliness. Tetsuo had everything, and yet something didn't quite fit. Was it because Tetsuo wasn't talking? No, it wasn't unusual for people to quiet down in front of family. After all, with no need to keep up appearances, there was also no need to make small talk. No, the loneliness Youji sensed was so different. He couldn't put his finger on it. His chopsticks moved from plate to plate, but even as he enjoyed his first home-cooked meal in ages, in the back of his mind he kept searching for the missing piece of the puzzle. Stop thinking. Stop overthinking. It was well past 9 p.m. by the time Youji arrived home. Tetsuo's mother must have been ecstatic to finally meet someone from her son's class, because she'd remained chatty long after the dinner had ended. Mostly, she'd asked about school, claiming Tetsuo never told her anything. It was clear from her tone that this was merely the reluctance of a young man asked to share his life with his mother, and not the aloof silence he exhibited at school. At home, Tetsuo was perfectly normal. But then, what was that lonely vibe he'd felt? As he pondered this, he changed into his pajamas and fed the fish. His mind was so distracted he nearly gave them too much. He'd been fidgety ever since he got home. Maybe it was nerves. Dinner had been perfectly pleasant, but that hadn't mitigated the anxiety of being in Tetsuo's house. On top of that, he'd failed to accomplish his original goal. He hadn't managed to ask Tetsuo a single question. Annoyed with himself, Youji left his room and headed for the kitchen. There in the sink was what looked like a black withered chunk of tree bark, with a dead flesh lump. He'd thought he'd disposed of them all, but apparently he'd missed one. Sensing the memory of the weekend's horrors looming in the back of his mind, he quickly averted his gaze. Next to the sink, the plastic container was sitting upside down in the dish drainer, clean and dry. Something about the stew tonight had reminded him of the container's former contents. If it truly was the same stew, however, that would mean Tetsuo had brought it to him. He struggled to imagine Tetsuo doing something like that for anyone, much less him. He thought back to dinner time and Erika's face floated through his mind. They had to share meals together, just like Tetsuo and his mother. All at once he was overcome with wistful nostalgia and a hint of envy toward Tetsuo. Still, that was a side of him Youji could never have seen at school. Strangely enough, he seemed more human at home. A lot more human than Youji himself anyway. He was starting to forget what being with family even felt like. He could admit it. He was jealous, plain and simple. And yet he couldn't stop thinking about the loneliness he'd sensed at the dinner table. That was clearly none of his business. He recalled the look on Tetsuo's face as he ate. Somehow the Tetsuo in his mind looked sadder than the real thing. I'm curious about Makoto at the moment. The next morning was uneventful. Youji's condition had stabilized, so he headed off to school. Perhaps a proper meal had done his body some good. Clearly. It was warm and sunny outside, unusually pleasant for this time of year. His book bag was slung over his shoulder, the plastic container inside. He couldn't bring himself to throw it away. Throw it away. Instead, he decided to find out if it was really was Tetsuo's. I have a feeling it's Makoto's. As he walked into the classroom, his gaze went to the windows. Tetsuo's desk was still vacant. Near the blackboard, Makoto was talking with a friend. He glanced over at Youji, but only for a moment. As Youji got ready for first period, he overheard a nearby group of students chatting.
なんかさ、昨日の喧嘩のやつ、 白沼は厳重注意で済んだらしいぜ。
Are they deliberately rumoring this?
そうなん？じゃあ今日は普通に出てくんのかな？
多分ね。まあ今まで問題起こしたこともないし、成績も優秀だしで多めに見られたっぽいよ。ほら、学年でも1、2を争うくらい頭いいからさ。よくわかんねえけど、進学率とかに問題出るんじゃねえの？
Japan is so open with the results, and so people keep talking about their grades. Like, you shouldn't know their grades, first off.
ああ、なるほどね。それにしても白沼ってあの外見で。
Then the door slid open, and the classroom went dead silent. It was Tetsuo. He glanced around the room, then nonchalantly walked in. Once he took his seat, the classroom quickly defrosted, and the usual chatter resumed. Youji sighed to himself and leaned back in his chair. He's misunderstood, but at the same time, what the fuck you been doing to Youji? Gee. The students who were previously gossiping about Tetsuo had now changed the subject. He shot a quick glance in Tetsuo's direction. His force field had felt much thinner at his house, but now it was back in full effect. This was the usual robotic Tetsuo. But now that Youji had seen a more human side of him, his mannequin impression was all the more unsettling. The more he learned about Tetsuo, the less he understood. Which version was the real him? As his mind wandered, the usual hymn began to play over the loudspeaker, and Youji rose to his feet for the morning prayer. At lunch, Youji waited until Tetsuo had left his seat, and took the plastic container out of his book bag and left the room. Cutting through the courtyard, he entered the old building and headed up the stairs to the roof. He had a hunch, one that had persisted ever since he'd walked out of the classroom. Pushing open the door to the roof, Youji stepped out onto the concrete. The bright sunshine made him squint. Through the glare, he could make out a figure sitting next to the safety fence. Sure enough, it was Tetsuo. Youji stopped just outside the doorway. He'd been change of vocals, wow. He'd been right, and that knowledge gave him a bit of a little of a rush, before doubt crept in, and he debated turning back. But then he remembered the plastic container he was carrying. For now, the first step was to find out if it was Tetsuo's. Stilling himself, Youji slowly walked forward. Like last time, Tetsuo was eating a yakisoba sub and watching the scenery. Sensing Yoji's approach, he turned his head. Their eyes met, and Youji suppressed the urge to flinch. Recently, he'd started to understand why he found Tetsuo so intimidating. Whenever Tetsuo looked at you, he always looked directly into your eyes. And it wasn't like he was trying to feel you out or gauge your reactions. He just stared straight at you and never looked away. Wow, he's taken a long time to walk over to him. It always felt like Tetsuo could see right through him. And he had a feeling that this was part of the reason why everyone else was so uncomfortable around him, too. Unsure what to do, Youji stood next to Tetsuo, keeping a bit of distance between them.
これ
So, Youji held it out for Tetsuo to see.
お前のじゃないよな。
The moment he asked the question, he instantly regretted it. What if he was wrong? He was ready to bolt. Oh, frightened little boy, acting like a girl with a crush. Tetsuo stared at Youji for a moment, then opened his mouth to speak.
そうだけど。
It is? So, Tetsuo really did bring him stew that day. Youji felt like he understood the man even less now.
なんで俺のところに。
His fucking face, man. Tetsuo didn't respond. Instead, he took another bite of his sandwich. Yoji waited for a moment, but evidently Tetsuo had no intention of answering. The silence was exceedingly awkward. A light breeze ruffled his hair, and he could smell a hint of chlorine from the pool next to the building. He couldn't just keep standing there. Reluctantly, he lowered himself beside Tetsuo. For some reason, being around Tetsuo wasn't as stressful as it used to be. Was it because they'd had dinner together? He glanced in Tetsuo's direction. Which was the real Tetsuo? This one or the one he'd met yesterday? Could both be real. It's still him. What about the Tetsuo who'd violated him in the rain? Yeah, what about... or the one who'd come by to deliver his worksheets? It was impossible to keep up. If only he could be sure that Tetsuo hated him, at least then he could respond in kind. In kind? Instead, suddenly, Tetsuo turned his head and Yoji found himself staring into his eyes. His heart leapt. He quickly turned away.
どういうつもりなんだよ。なんか、いろいろ。
Yoji mumbled, staring down at the ground. As usual, Tetsuo didn't respond. This time, however, the silence pushed Yoji to continue.
お前のこと、よくわからない。何回か見てるんだよな。俺が、なのに、なんで？もしかしたら、変な病気かもしれないのに。気持ち悪くないのかよ。
Oops. As he spoke, his eyes wandered over the cracks in the concrete.
お前のこと、ホモなのかと思ったけど。そうだったとしても、こんな気味悪いやつは相手にしないよな。普通。
Embrace the gay. As inhuman as me.
俺は、お前のことが怖い。何をされるかわからないし、何を考えてるのかもわからないから。だから。
Unsure how to finish, Yoji fell silent. The air between them felt so awkward. He couldn't think of anything to say, because he was gay. Maybe Tetsuo was fed up with him. He had humiliated himself in front of Tetsuo so many times now. Perhaps all this was flaying, for meaning was just making it worse. In that case, maybe it was the best they cut ties for good. With that thought, he moved to get up. All of a sudden, something appeared before his eyes. It was a sub sandwich covered in a cling wrap. A yakisoba egg sub, to be precise. The Academy's most popular menu item, and one that often sold out within the first 10 minutes of lunch break. Did Tetsuo buy it for him? No way. He couldn't picture Tetsuo doing that. And yet the sandwich was right there. Could he possibly accept such a generous gift? Wait, what was he thinking? He's being kind, he cares about your health. Yoji thrust the empty container into Tetsuo's hands and stood up, ignoring the sandwich. Then he turned and headed for the door. For some reason, he felt utterly humiliated and a little angry. Were these feelings directed at Tetsuo or himself? Either way, being around Tetsuo always seemed to throw him for a loop. Driven by emotions he couldn't describe, Yoji fled downstairs. Those are the feelings, Yoji, indeed. By the time he made it back to the classroom, lunch break was nearly over. Yoji returned to his desk and went to take out his textbook for fifth period. Just then, he sensed someone's presence and looked up to find Tetsuo standing there. Why, of course. Was Tetsuo angry with him? Now that he thought about it, his actions certainly warranted it. After all, he stormed off without even acknowledging Tetsuo's offer. As Yoji steeled himself for a fight, Tetsuo set something down on his desk. A very familiar-looking wallet.
俺の
Yo.
階段に落ちてた。
Oh. Wow, I'm a klutz. Youji realized that he must have dropped it on his way back. He usually kept it in his back pocket, so it must have slipped out while he was running. And now, Tetsuo had returned it to him. He only needed to say 2 words. Thank you. Arigato gozaimasu. And yet, he couldn't do it. Part of it was stubbornness, but mostly it was shame. He was furious with himself for acting like a child when Tetsuo was always so calm and mature. He hung his head in silence for a moment, then he felt something cold touch his neck. Youji looked up in surprise. It was Tetsuo's hand. Why are you so cold, bro? Instantly, memories flashed through his head. The toilet stall. The encounter in the rain. You remind me of a toilet stall. He jerked away, shooting Tetsuo a suspicious glare.
なんだよ。また、滲んでた。
Oh, what the hell?
何が滲んで。
Putting 2 and 2 together, Youji put a hand on his neck, then he pulled it away. His palm was stained with a bit of red fluid. Jesus, what is that? I've never seen that one before. Dang, it looks intimidating. How long had it been there? Had anyone else seen it? Tetsuo could see it, at least. This proved that it was an hallucination. Still, how could Tetsuo bring himself to do that? To just touch someone's blood like it was no big deal. Didn't it disgust him at all? As Youji watched, Tetsuo slowly curled his hand into a fist. It was like he was cradling the fingers that had touched Yoji's neck. The sight was captivating. Youji felt his face grow hot. An ache blossomed deep in his gut. A low breath escaped his lips, and then...
離れろよ。
Oh, it's Makoto. Oh shit. I would have left it at a cliffhanger, but guess what? I wanted to see him. A cold voice broke the spell, and Makoto stepped in front of Youji like a shield.
幼児、嫌がってるだろ。どけよ。
Dang. Makoto fixed Tetsuo with a vicious glare.
迷惑なんだよ。いきなり付きまとってきてわけわかんねえし。幼児が嫌がってるの分かってんだよ
You
な。
never heard of my opinion.
おい。
どけよ。金輪際、幼児に近づくな。
Other students were shooting concerned looks their way. Youji had no idea what was happening. Should he say something? What? Reason? Of course reason, right? But I better leave it at a cliffhanger. Over and out. Oh god, that fucking jump scared me. Over and out.